Everyone thought he was a loser who didn't know how to use magic, but he has unlimited magic and ends up becoming the most powerful wizard. His name is Sable, or Saber in Japanese, but I'll call him Sabe. He was a homeless loser with no memory of his past. However, his life changed when a mysterious woman approached him one day. She looked into his bright, charming eyes, which were basically proof that he had a lot of magic. At the time, she told him that she would take him to a special place where he belonged. Then I thought, could it be her heart? However, she took him to a place where students study magic to become wizards and witches. Now it's been 3 years since he was admitted, and Sabe is considered the dumbest student in the history of the academy, all because he can't cast a single spell decently. He receives a summons from the principal, and when he arrives at her office, he finds a blonde lowly. The girl throws a tantrum because she's not being led to the office, but when she notices Sabe, she turns her staff into a gun and points it at his neck. She then tells him to scream, because if he does, the principal will surely come and save him. That said, the principal's servant, a beastly man called Holden, arrives and confronts the lowly. Holden disarms the witch and blows up her staff, which returns to its original form when it hits the ground. Sabe decides to pick it up for her, and both the lowly and the wolf panic when they see it. Holden pushes him away and kicks the staff towards the lowly, who cries at the sight of her trusted partner, the staff, being mistreated like this. Suddenly, the door behind them opens, and headmistress Albus comes out to see the cause of the commotion. She is shocked to see the lowly witch, whom she identifies as Christe's Hulk, and tells Sabe that he is being sent to a faraway place for special training because she believes that this academy will not make him any better. Albus begins to tell the long and bloody story of the war between the witches and the church, which ended only 5 years ago. After the war, the noble side, including the kingdom in which they live, accepted magic and witches. The southern side, on the other hand, is still very hostile to them, and reports of witch hunts are routine there. The reason the north accepted magic was a smaller, more intense war that took place 10 years ago. Basically, a very powerful man called Evil Wizard Roman 13 spread the teaching of magic in the kingdom of Winia, and led a war to create a world where witches and wizards were not hunted. Albus didn't agree with his methods, and in the end she killed him. However, she believes that the current acceptance of magic in the north is thanks to Wizard Roman 13, who has made magic more commonplace. On the other hand, things are difficult for witches in the south, so she has decided to build a witches' village there. She wants Sam and some other students to prove to everyone that they're not dangerous, and that wizards can live like ordinary people. If they don't manage to impress the local authorities within 3 years, everyone will lose their memories of magic and the academy. Hoax admits that Albus has made a good plan, and volunteers to be the witch in charge of this mission. Albus tries to tell her that they have another teacher for the job, but Hoax says that she won't cooperate with her and the academy in the future if she can't go to that village. Albus is a little frustrated by all this, so Hoax tells her that he will only work for her if she allows him to read Zero's grimoire, which is the first book of magic ever written in this world. Albus responds by saying that this is a forbidden book, which contains the power to destroy the world, and that Hoax cannot be allowed to read it. However, they reach an agreement when Albus allows Hoax to meet the Black Witch of Mud, who is the author of Zero's grimoire. The next day, Sabe meets Hoax at the market, where they are preparing to leave for the south. Joining them is Holt, a cheerful redhead with a huge personality. They are joined by a lizard called Cud, who insists that he doesn't need anyone to guide him. He tells Hoax that he will be traveling south independently, along with 2 other students. Sabe and the girls sit down in a restaurant, and Hoax feeds her team some succulent meat skewer. She introduces her staff as the Staff of Ludens, also known as the Witch Eater, because it sucks the magical power out of whoever touches it and kills them. And Hoax can only hold on to it because Ludens is so well balled up and so well guarded. After that, they start their journey, and Sabe gets disgusted as soon as they get on a wagon, so Hoax decides to continue the rest of the journey standing up. In the evening, they talk about their past, and Sabe says that he has no memories of enrolling in the academy, which is why he wants to pass the test in the special village, because if his memories of the academy are erased, he'll just be an empty shell. Just then, Hoax arrives with water on her staff, and as the girls talk more about themselves, they discover that Sabe can barely use magic. When he tries to use his spell, his magic goes out of control, and when he tries to control his magic, it simply doesn't manifest. Hoax thinks he should give up on being a wizard, as it will take too long for him to learn anything. The next day, they arrive in a village and get a room in an inn. While having breakfast, the 2 mages who were with Cud come downstairs complaining that Largato has abandoned them and run away. As soon as they see Sabe's Sabe's group, they inform them that they were attacked by bandits last night. Their belongings weren't stolen, but Cud took a map with him and declared that he was the only wizard in the group, then ran away. Hoax finds this story strange because any normal bandit would steal their belongings and kidnap the boys to sell them into slavery. However, as Cud was the specific target, she believes that this is the work of a witch hunter. Cud probably realized this too, so he ran off on his own to let his companions escape to safety. Hoax takes responsibility for having let Cud go alone and decides to save him on her own. She forbids Sabe and everyone else to join her, as they would only be an obstacle in her path. However, when they are alone in their rooms, they realize that they can't stand by while their classmate is in trouble. Suddenly, Hoax has an idea and uses divination magic using Hoax's scarf and identifies their exact location on a map. They head into the forest, but Hoax is still annoyed at the two useless mages who refuse to go with them to help Cud, saying it's not their fault and a simple piece of shit died. Suddenly, they see Cud's severed tail with blood everywhere. Disgusting. They panic at the sight, and Hoax wonders if the severed tail means that Cud is dead. However, even though Sabe is a boy with no memory, he's still a genius. He believes that because he's a stray, Cud is still alive and could even recover his lost body part. After hearing this, Hoax picks up the tail as a precaution, and then Sabe notices 3 footprints on the ground. 2 of them belong to Cud and Hoax, which means that the 3rd footprint belongs to the guy attacking them. It is at this moment that Hoax is terrified to realize that there is only one witch hunter strong enough to corner Cud and make him run so as not to be killed. She shudders as she remembers what she learned about the professional witch hunters who were recruited by the church. She then reveals that most of them are criminals on death row. Because of this, she can't control her fear when she discovers that those involved are part of the Dia Igreja, the organization of the cruelest witch hunters. Sabe says that this organization was disbanded after the war, but Hoax shouts at him, saying that even if the organization no longer exists, that doesn't mean that its hunters have retired. She, full of fear, says that she knew a member of the Dia Igreja in the past. She went to a nearby village to meet her friend, but all she found was a pile of burnt bodies and a ferocious man with a gigantic hammer standing in front of them. She was so terrified of the witch hunter that she ran away crying, with her pants all pissed, all while someone close to her was being burned at the stake. This time, she wants to run away too. However, they suddenly hear a scream in the distance and realize that the scream came from Cud. Hoax thinks it's best to run away, but Sabe wants to go and help his friend. He tells Hoax that this is her chance to gain courage and not make the same mistake as in the past. And after hearing this motivational speech, she decides to follow him. On the other hand, Cud was hiding in the trees, while the hunters were looking for him and setting traps everywhere. He noticed a rope tied to the branch he was resting on, when suddenly the branch snapped, and as he fell to the ground, several hidden traps fired arrows at him. He dodged them somehow, but ended up being wounded by the thorns on the ground. Now, despite his injuries, he tries to escape the jungle, but stumbles into a simple trap. He fears that the arrows will rain down on him again, but instead he comes across a terrible witch hunter called Tyrant, from whom he fled last night. In their last encounter, Cud's magical attacks didn't work, so this time he tries to blind him using a light spell and runs away. However, Tyrant recovers easily and reaches him in an instant. He hits Cud with his giant hammer and throws him against a tree. The hunter then notices that the wound on Cud's feet is already closing up and laughs, saying that he'll get a good deal if he sells it to some church researcher. He orders his men to bring a cage, and this brings back memories of Cud from when he was a little largat. At the time, he was enslaved by some circus freak who put on a show using his excellent regeneration skill. He escaped from that horrible place and came to the academy to strengthen himself, but it seems all was in vain. He clings desperately to a tree root, and the tyrant crushes his hands mercilessly. Cud screams in pain, but is not willing to give up yet, and now grabs a root with his jaw. This time, the tyrant is about to end his life for good, when suddenly a tree next to him is cut in half. The hunter looks around and finds Hulk sitting at the top of a tree. She commands her staff to attack the man, and it takes the form of a jaw. The tyrant defends himself with his castle, and asks if that is Ludin's legendary staff. The Hulk then declares that she is the 3,000-year-old Witch of the Dawn, at which point she is also the teacher of the Largato he tried to kill. The tyrant gets nervous and attacks the tree she's in, but it doesn't have much effect. The Hulk attacks him using her staff, and shows her power by cutting down several trees in an instant. The tyrant realizes that he is doomed, when suddenly the voices of Sabe and the Hulk are heard from afar. The Hulk tells everyone to run, but it's too late, and the tyrant is already under them. Sabe pushes Hulk to safety, but he ends up being knocked down. Soon after, the tyrant begins a light chokehold, and the Hulk recognizes him as the same terrifying man who killed her friend and is terrified. The Hulk arrives and tells the hunter that if he kills one of her students, she will kill him instantly. He then offers her a deal, asking her to throw down her staff and become his prisoner in exchange for his students. She gets angry seeing Sabe's suffering, so she throws the staff on the ground. The tyrant laughs and throws his anti-magic line over the staff and tells Sabe to wrap it up and take it to him. Sabe does as she's told, and then the tyrant calls Hulk by name and asks her to tie Hulk up. She trembles with fear, and the hunter asks her to stop the act, as she is actually a spy for the church's anti-witch faction. The Hulk shouts to silence him, and this moment of tension leads her to reflect on the events of the past. When she was young, horns suddenly started growing on her head. Her mother, being a devout believer, sent her to church, where they cut off her horns and put her in an orphanage. One day, she was given the mission of enrolling in the Magic Academy as a spy and reporting everything she found out about witches to the government. The Hulk was happy to help, but as time passed at the academy and she began to make friends, the Hulk began to feel overwhelmed by guilt. She didn't want to be a spy anymore. She wanted to be a real witch. So when she had the chance to take part in the special training, she accepted the offer, but never imagined that her identity would be revealed on this mission. The Hulk falls to her knees, feeling the weight of her guilt, but Sabe gives her a forced smile and says that these things are not her fault. Seeing his effort, she decides not to deceive her friends any longer. She immediately grabs Kuji's tail and uses it as a spell to release bright blue flames. She attacks Tyrant with the flames, and he grabs the cloak from Sabe's hands to protect himself. The cloak blocks the attack, and the Hulk is terrified as the Tyrant approaches her. He's about to smash it when suddenly Sabe hears Luden's voice asking the boy to use it. He is fascinated by the staff and picks it up. As it absorbs the boy's magic, the staff glows, and suddenly a dark fluid spreads in all directions. Everyone is worried about Sabe, while the streaks of dark fluid distort the area and form a giant sphere around them. A few hours later, Sabe opens his eyes and sees the Hulk standing over him. He gets scared and pulls away, and she immediately hugs him, now crying with joy that he's alive. However, the Hulk isn't happy about what happened. She shows Sabe what he has just caused. She yells at him saying that using the Luden staff is suicide, and then calls the three students reckless. Afterwards, as they continue their journey, Sabe asks her why he's still alive, and the Hulk says it's quite simple. He has too much magic, and Luden's staff has reached its absorption limit. In short, he basically has infinite mana. So, while everyone else is shocked by this news, the Hulk says that it's probably because of this infinite magic that it's so difficult for him to control magic. The Hulk then tells Kuti that he's coming with them this time, and when he tries to refuse, she climbs on top of him and says she'll only leave when he gives in. It's at this point that the Hulk wonders where his tail is, but the Hulk tells him that she used it as a spell offering, and Cody loses his patience at hearing that. In the evening, Sabe and Hulk have coffee outside, while Hulk and Cody rest inside the inn. The Hulk takes off his hat and makes Sabe feel his horns while he tells her the story of his childhood. In her childhood, everyone said that the horns were proof that the Hulk was the son of a demon, but now she has learned from her teacher that she has the blood of the beast people. People with beast traits are created when a witch grants the power of a beast to a warrior. However, if both the warrior and the witch die, the power is linked to the witch's bloodline, which is what happened to her. The Hulk thanks Sabe for trusting her and kisses him on the cheek before running off to sleep. As soon as she leaves, the Hulk appears next to Sabe and tells him that the Hulk would easily stay with him if he showed some interest. The next day, two other magicians are arrested by the police because they were leaking information to the church in exchange for money. The Hulk then declares that only the four of them will continue the journey. First, she wants Cody to heal his destroyed hands using healing magic, but he says he doesn't have enough power for that. Then the Hulk responds by saying that they have Sabe, which is a magical energy bank with unlimited charge. She reveals that the most efficient way of transferring magic is through a kiss, but Cody immediately rejects it, saying that he'd rather be handicapped for a few months than kiss a man. Then the Hulk says that they can also use normal contact to transfer mana. However, if things go wrong and Cody absorbs more magic than he can handle, he will die a horrible death full of pain, which is why she decides to be the link between them. The Hulk holds both their hands and transfers Sabe's magic to Cody, who enters the healing spell, and within seconds, his destroyed arms and tail are completely regenerated. The villagers are amazed to see this, and the Hulk calls a party so that everyone can get busy dancing and singing. Soon they arrive at a huge city, and a carriage drives by and pours mud all over Sabe. "You poor thing. He can't use magic and he's covered in mud." The Hulk tells him not to worry because the hotel she frequents has a very good public restroom, great for those fanservice episodes. A while later, while Sabe and Cody are cleaning themselves in the bathtub, Cody reveals his story, saying that 6 years ago he was part of a freak show, and a powerful witch attack in the northern region destroyed almost everything. Somehow, Cody survived the destruction and was rescued by a powerful entity from the church. At that time, the Beast People were still very much discriminated against, but despite this, the one who rode a dragon saved him with a smile on his face. And since then, Cody has dreamed of joining the church, wanting to be part of the army of wizards like the guy who saved him. The next day, when they return to the surface peacefully, everywhere they go people meet the Hulk. She knows the best places to fish and rest, and during the trip, she teaches her students how to survive in the wild, and also encourages them to use magic to help others. Everyone opens up to her, and she tells them that she has been living a small life for over 300 years. Now she doesn't even have to eat, sleep, or reproduce, so life is boring for her. The only thing that makes her feel alive is having fun, and she also feels very excited when something very dangerous happens in the world. Life goes on calmly until one day a boy comes running towards them and tells them that it's not safe for everyone to stay outside. He takes the Hulk's hand and leads everyone to a hollow tree trunk, where he uses magic to create a barrier that hides everyone perfectly. However, this magic doesn't block out the sound. Suddenly, a white tiger appears and starts calling the boy. He threatens to break his friend's bones if he doesn't show up. Beastman hears the heartbeats of the people hiding in the hollow tree trunk and swings his blade at everyone. The barrier breaks and the boy falls out of it. Saber and his friends quickly go after him to protect him, but the mercenary tells them that it will be impossible to use magic against him, as he will kill them before they can finish chanting any spells. Suddenly, he realizes that there is someone behind him and turns around to find the Hulk launching an attack at him. Beastman stops her attack, and she returns to the branch of a tree, telling her students to run. They follow her command, and when the Hulk teases the mercenary asking if he won't chase them, he responds by saying that turning his back on her is not a good idea. He seems strangely well informed about Luden's staff and his entire team. He also knows about the special training program, which consists of creating a village of witches, which ends up frustrating the Hulk. The mercenary withdraws from the fight because he knows he can't beat her and tells her to go to the village immediately, as her students may be in danger. At the same time, Saber, Hulk, and Cootie escort the boy safely to the village church, where a blindfolded priest called Dan greets them. The boy tells Dan that the 3 people saved him, and he asks if they are magicians. Saber is confused and asks how he knew that, and the priest says that the targets of that enemy will always be wizards. Saber then asks him why Beastman attacked them, and Dan says that Beastman is the mercenary who guards the village on behalf of a certain witch, and tells everyone to flee this place, because it's too dangerous here. He explains that 2 years ago, the witch the Academy placed in this village suddenly surrendered to an invader, without even putting up a fight. The invading witch took control of the area, and since then, no one has been able to stand up to her. Suddenly, Saber realizes that the 2 students from the special group have been arrested for denouncing the church, and Hulk was a spy, and Cody was from the Beast People, and Saber himself is the worst student at the Academy. When he realizes this, he believes that they were sent here so that the Academy could get rid of them, and his friends are startled to hear this. Cody says they should contact the church and the army of mages, but Dan informs them that no one will help their village. While everyone is in doubt, the Hulk suddenly appears. She asks her students to doubt the shady-looking priest, as he may well be involved with a mercenary. Dan asks her to try and kill him if she's so suspicious, but the Hulk claims not to be a fan of unnecessary violence. She asks him to take them on a tour of the village to prove that he is not an enemy. The priest agrees and takes them to the village where they should stay. There they find the boy's father waiting for him, the boy called Laios, and his father gives them a tour of the village and tells them that the former witch was really their friend. Cody asks why she left the village without trying to fight the invader, but the man has no idea why. The rest of the villagers hide in their houses, and he explains that no one there likes strangers. They then take them to a house where 4 human-sized dolls are hanging in a frightening manner. Laios' father explains that a few years ago, some people tried to flee the village, so the witch and her mercenary dealt with them and set up these dolls as a threat to anyone who tried to leave. However, he says that the witch wouldn't cause any problems for the villagers if they didn't break her rule. After that, they enter a dilapidated house, and when Hoax finishes examining it, she declares that they must kill the witch who controls the area. Hoax suggests that they go back to the academy to get help from the church and the army of wizards, but Sage is opposed to the idea, as it will turn the village into a battlefield. He wants to do something about this problem on his own. However, Cud grabs him by the collar. They say they have no chance of winning against a witch who can command the fearsome mercenary tiger. He claims that this fight will end with their deaths, but Sage takes Cud's hands off him and says that when he touched Luden's staff, he realized that he wasn't afraid of dying at all. Hoke says that the mere idea of him killing himself scares her, and Sage tells her to leave the village with Cud so that he and Hoax can fight alone. With tears in her eyes, Hoke says that what she means is that the idea of Sage dying scares her. He can't understand her words, as Sage has never dealt with emotional girl. As a result, Hoke starts crying and runs away. Sage tries to run after her to apologize, but Hoke stops him because if he apologizes without even knowing what he did wrong, the girl might get even more hurt. Cud then tells him that Hoax was hurt because she considers him a friend, and she doesn't want him to die in vain. Sage now understands the girl's feelings better, so he runs to find her and apologize. Meanwhile, Hoax is in church, where she meets a small, shy girl called Lily, who tries to comfort her. Suddenly, the blindfolded priest appears behind them and scolds Lily. He then asks Hoax why she came here, and after telling him about her fight with Sage, she tries to leave, but then she notices the Diagonese symbol on the priest's cane. She is terrified to realize that he is an enemy and starts to walk backwards, when she suddenly finds herself tied up by strong rope. Dan then threatens her, saying that she must go back to acting as a spy for the anti-witch faction if she wants to live. On the other hand, Sage returns home empty-handed. He couldn't find any information about Hoax, so Hoax decides to trace her magic. A search leads them to a cave in the forest, where they find blood on the ground, and Hoax senses the magical trail of several people inside the cave. Cud wants to leave because this is obviously a trap, but Hoax thinks that if the local witch wants to receive them, she will accept his invitation. She uses her staff to sense and dispel all the traps in the cave, but Cud still isn't convinced to fight. Hoax tries to encourage him, reminding him that he plans to join the church and the army of wizards who are not afraid to fight opponents stronger than themselves. She asks Cud if he wants to be like the one who saved him, or if he's out of the fight, and he chooses the second option. He runs out of the cave, but meets Yohei outside, who offers the broad to join him, as it will make him much stronger. In response, Cud asks Yohei about the blood in the cave, and demands to know what he did with Hope. However, the enemy just laughs and says that he ate the girl, and that she was very juicy. This infuriates Cud, who turns red and blue with rage, and tells the tiger he's going to kill him. Inside the cave, Saber uses light magic to illuminate everything, but he can't control his power, and Hoax is almost blinded by the lights. He finally manages to get the spell under his control, but the Hoax doesn't stop bothering him for a long time. She says that any witch would like to have an apprentice like him, with infinite power, and this brings back some forgotten memories for Saber. He falls to his knees when he remembers them, but gets up immediately. Hoax tells him that he can go back now, as moving on will be dangerous for him, but he is willing to face the danger. Suddenly, a door at the back of the cave opens, and some tentacles shoot out and grab Saber. Hoax tries to help him, but her staff is pulled away from her. Dan arrives on the scene immediately and kicks Hoax into the room with Saber. When the door closes, he tells the Hoax that she should have killed him the moment she suspected him. Saber soon gets up and sees another witch in front of him. She releases a soft blue light around her, and with a glance, Saber recognizes her as the witch who rescued her when her life was too lonely. The witch calls him, saying she's been waiting for him for a long time, and Saber asks who she is. But Hoax is suspicious of the new witch. The witch doesn't like her either, and with the flick of her fingers, she sends her flying. When Saber runs to help Hoax, the witch says she's disappointed that a special existence like his is surrounded by worthless people. Suddenly, she throws a blood-covered hat in front of Saber, scaring him, and he asks what she's done, and the witch says she sent her tiger mercenary to eat her. Yes, devour the Hoax, which ends up devastating him even more. She says that she has gone to great lengths to have him there, and that includes taking control of the village. Saber hears this, and thinks that everything that is happening is his fault, so the forgotten memories of his past come back to him once again, and the witch asks him to go with her, so that she can take him to a place befitting his level, but he refuses. He says that he was perfectly fine with his friends, and that they treated him well even when everyone thought he was a loser. He tells the witch that he will decide who is worthy of being by her side, and judges her to be unfit for the job. He plans to use all his magic and a single spell to destroy himself, but just as he's about to start, the Hoax kisses him. Unable to process what is happening, he gives in to her kiss, and after After a long kiss, Hoax feels full of magical energy. She chants the same magic quatrain used by the tyrant earlier and fires a dragon of blue flames towards the witch, but she instantly nullifies its magic. The witch proudly tells Hoax that she is the creator of this spell and that it is foolish for anyone to use it against her. She declares that she is the original Zero's witch, the one who wrote Zero's grimoire, and it's at that moment that Sabe realizes that they don't stand a chance against her. When Zero comes towards him, he tries to protect Hope, but as incredible as it seems, no attack comes his way. Instead, confetti is flying all over the cave. Zero nudges Sabe's nose, telling him that from today, she will be the one supervising him in his special training. He still doesn't know what to do, and now even Hoax has started praising Zero. Sabe looks perplexed, not understanding anything, so she tells him that it was all a test he passed. Suddenly, Hoax comes running towards them, and Sabe is relieved to see that she's alright. She rolls him and says that their arrival in the village was an elaborate test, and that all the villagers were involved. The blindfolded priest also vouched for her and asked her to remain a pimple, but she spat in his face, and being a pervert, the miserable man liked it. Dunk arrives just then and assaults her for bad-mouthing him. He then talks to the Hoax and asks her if she knew it was a test. The Hoax replies by saying that it was obvious that everything was prepared, because the house they were in was very clean and well stocked, and they told her that the house had been abandoned for over 2 years. Just then, Yokuin arrives with Cud, who has also passed the test. Cud was happy to see his friends alive and ran to hug them. In the evening, the villagers throw a party for the wizards and witches who passed the test. After the party, Zero once again congratulates the 3 students, and Hoax asks her why she is trying so hard to fail them. She replies that as they have a lot of talent, she needed to check that they were good people, and that they would all match her thought. She says that if they reached their full potential and chose to follow the path of evil, it would end up causing a catastrophe, as has happened time and time again. Zero says that Hoax has a talent that will make her the equal of Director Albus, but to reach that level, it will take a few decades. As for Cud, Zero believes that if he improves his healing magic, he could even become immortal. That said, she claims that Sabe's peak is invisible even to her. Zero claims that due to his infinite magical power, Sabe can live for centuries, and if he continues to evolve his magic during that time, nothing will be impossible for him. However, she adds that if they neglect their training, they'll never be more than 3 crap magicians. Zero then explains that they will have to set up their exclusive stores in the village so that the locals can ask for their help more easily. She wants to tell them more. However, the tiger and the priest interrupt his lecture by bringing food. Afterwards, the 3 students walk home when suddenly, Cud sees a man riding a dragon in the night sky. He soon recognizes this man as the one who saved his life. He tells his friends about the man, and they immediately rush to find him. The man and his dragon land in the village, and it turns out that he is here to deliver some letters to the 3 students. When Sabe and his friends open the letter, they discover that they are free to use their magic as they please. Everyone is shocked to hear this, even the Dragon Knight, who realizes that this is an authorization to engage in battle with the anti-witch faction. Afterwards, they return home, and Hoax throws a tantrum, because she also wanted to see a dragon up close, and this may be her only chance, because now that everyone has a definitive teacher, she plans to go on a journey. The students are depressed to hear this, but then Hoax tells them that she's not going anywhere until she's read all the books Zero has written, and that will probably take a long time. Everyone is happy to hear this and rushes to hug her. Later, when Hoax and Zero are alone, Hoax confronts her about the weakening of her magic, and expresses concern that she might be trying to put Sabe under her protection in order to steal his magic. Zero then tells her the story of the witch who killed Sabe's mother, and it happened right in front of him, and his mother at the time was trying to steal his power. However, she died instantly from an overdose of magic, and this incident left a deep emotional scar on Sabe. As a result, he sealed his memories and suffered endlessly afterwards. So when Zero found him, she decided to send him to the academy to give him a second chance at life. However, she called him in to monitor him in case his powers now got out of control. Hoax asks Zero by what right she is trying to control Sabe's life, and she replies that he is her nephew. This comes as a shock to Hoax, as Zero's only brother was the famous magician number 13, the one who caused the most destructive war of all time. Zero admits that this same exceptional mage is Sabe's father. 2 months have passed since this incident, and the 3 students have settled into their respective stores. Hoax works as a freelancer, fulfilling various requests from the villagers, and Cud uses his healing magic and works as an assistant in the clinic, while Sabe runs a magic store and serves everyone who needs magic. His biggest customers are his his two friends, who feel something very pleasant while receiving his magical power. Sabe stays at home while his friends go out to work, and he reflects on how he is getting used to this life. Out of nowhere, the hoax enters the house. While they were having breakfast, Elo scolded him for being a closed man. He tells her that he needs to stay at home in case anyone needs magic. In addition, he cooks, cleans, and does the laundry, and he says he feels empty when he doesn't do these tasks. After hearing this, the Hulk feels sorry for the boy. She climbs onto a chair to hug him, and his warm embrace ends up comforting her. She then reflects on how Sabe needs someone to teach him to be more human. That said, Elo gives Ella a mission to fetch tea leaves so that he can get out of the house for a bit of a change. On the way, he meets Laios and tells the boy that he's going to look for some tea leaves. The boy says he knows where tea leaves grow and takes Sabe into the forest. Sabe isn't sure if he should go into the forest without protection, but Laios goes off on his own, forcing Sabe to follow him. Further on, Sabe finally finds him hiding at the top of a tree and asks him to come down, and Laios apologizes because he was lying to make himself look cool, and now he doesn't even know the way home. Sabe starts to comfort him, and then the mouse starts to chew his pants. Laios immediately recognizes the mouse as one of Lily's pets, and says they should follow it out of the forest, so he and Sabe run after the mouse and soon arrive at the church. Laios quickly finds his mother waiting for him there, and she angrily takes him home. Meanwhile, Dan appears behind Sabe, exuding a murderous aura. He invites him into the church, and the girl Lily welcomes him there. Dan tells her to take off her hood, but she refuses because she doesn't want to scare the guest. The priest doesn't listen to her and forcibly removes the hood, and Lily is embarrassed with her true rat form exposed in front of Sabe. But Dan tells her to stop making noise and prepare food for the guest, and poor Lily has low self-esteem because of her appearance, but apparently Sabe doesn't understand what her problem is. Lily soon brings him food, and Dan scolds Sabe for going into the forest without being aware of the danger. He tells him to find the tea leaves near Zero's house, and also advises him to get out of the house more and walk around the village more often, so he won't make the same mistake again. After that, Sabe goes out and meets Holt on the way. Holt is surprised to find him outside the house, and helps him clean his face after the delicious meal he's just had. Sabe notices that there is blood on the sleeve of her shirt, but Holt tells him that it belongs to Yohei and not to her. She went into the forest with a mercenary to hunt some wolves. However, she panicked when she was surrounded. In the end, she took too long to chant her spell, and in the end, she hit Yohei instead of the wolf. Holt cries, thinking she's a failure as a witch, and when Lily takes her away, Hulk appears beside him, saying that they need him to provide his magic now. She takes him to Zero, who is trying to stop the mercenary from bleeding anymore. As soon as Zero sees her nephew, she kisses him and absorbs enough magic from him to cast a high-level spell. Yohei quickly feels better, and the first thing he does is express his jealousy, and Sabe asks Zero if Holt will be expelled because of this incident, and neither Zero nor Yohei think she's done anything to disqualify her from training, and they promise to give her more chances. However, the training this time is going to be more rigorous, and this reminds Sabe of Lai, so he sets out to find him so he can give him another chance to play in the forest. Meanwhile, Zero discovers that the Hulks have sent Sabe on an unnecessary assignment just to get him out of the house. The Hulks complain, saying that they don't like Sabe being locked in the house, but Zero and Yohei have no problem with that. They want to let the boy do whatever he wants. But Hulk throws a tantrum, saying that he needs to become a man if he wants to be with her. After that, Yohei goes home, leaving the two witches alone. Hulks asks Zero why she only took some of Sabe's magic when she needs a lot more magic at the moment, and Zero replies that as Sabe's family and supervisor, she can't take more than she needs from him. The Hulks say that she'll grow old and die at this rate, but Zero doesn't regret it, because she's lived long enough and even had an anime all to herself, alongside Yohei. Now we see that as well as Hulk screwing up, Cud also made mistakes in his work. He went to a neighboring village to cure some patients and got too carried away. He tried to cure them all at once, but fainted halfway through, and the doctor took him back home. When he wakes up in his room, he wonders what happened, but then discovers that the Hulk has screwed up more than him, and they start arguing to decide who is the most useless. Hulk arrives just in time to break up the fight, and tells them that they must make an effort to improve on their mistakes from tomorrow onward. She also informs them that the three of them will have to visit Zero together tomorrow. The next day, the trio go to Zero's house, where they see his magnificent collection of books. She explains that these are only the books she keeps to herself, and that the most important ones are hidden in the Forbidden Library in the north. The Hulk is very excited to visit the library with her friends in the future, but Cud says that this is very difficult for him. After the war with the evil witch, many demonic monsters were unleashed in the north, and they still make that region an suitable place to live. Zero says it's true, and even Sabe gives up on the Hulk's plan to visit the library in the future. But the Hulk tries to convince them that with Sabe's unlimited magic, her attack spells, and Cud's healing, they will be invincible. However, Cud simply replies that he won't trust a witch who attacks her own teammates. When he mentions this, Zero suddenly goes into serious mode and says that she has a special lesson for Hulk, and until she learns to cancel his spells, she won't be going home again. She drags the girl away while Sabe discovers an interesting book. Outside, Zero makes the Hulk attack her, and she hopes that the girl will cancel her spell at the last moment. Hulk's spell almost hits her, but she manages to cancel it in time, and Zero says that this is enough for now, and she tells Hulk to practice using the same high-level spell to light candles in her house. The Hulk complains that she doesn't have enough magic, so Zero uses the same amount of magic as her, but the result of her spell is much greater. Zero teaches her to try new ways of using magic, when suddenly she collapses from magic exhaustion. The students immediately rush to her side, and Sabe tries to transfer his magic by holding hands, but it doesn't work, so he suggests a kiss like yesterday, but Zero says that's not necessary. She gets up staggering with weakness, and says that a good meal will help her get better in no time. She faints once again, but Sabe catches her, and this reminds Zero of her brother Magician 13. He takes her to his room and tries to share magic with her again, but it doesn't work. Sabe is confused, but Zero tells him that if she wants to, she can suck the magic out of him. However, his attention suddenly turns to her eyes, which are an exact replica of his own. Sabe then asks her if she knows his mother, but Nero denies it, saying that she knew his father. Sabe had never thought he had a father before that, but before he could ask Zero about it, she points to the book he picked up in the library. Sabe says that he got the book to help him collect medicinal herbs, and Zero tells him that he'll have a hard time deciphering what's written, all because of the terrible handwriting of the person who wrote it. However, he simply replies that his handwriting is very similar, and that he can even understand everything very well here. And then Zero reveals that it was Sabe's father who wrote this book. She says that his father was a genius like no other, and that there may be secrets hidden in the book that only Sabe can decipher. Just then, Yohei comes running in with food and thanks Sabe for keeping Zero company. He apologizes for not being able to provide magic, and Zero decides to tell him something important. She tells him that the reason he and his friends are here is so that they can all develop as magic users. But if he doesn't want to be a magician and prefers to remain a magic supplier, he has no role here. Soon after, Sabe and Lies enter the forest, and although he is initially stunned, he quickly regains his composure and collects useful herbs with the help of the book. They spot the carcass of a deer before returning to a bed of red flowers, which is the main herb they need to collect. As Laios celebrates his discovery, Sabe senses a sinister presence around him. He looks around and finds a throbbing mass of muscle with spikes coming out of it. He tells Laios to duck, but it's too late, and the throbbing thing shoots thorns out with great force. Sabe suffers only a few cuts. However, when he turns around, he finds that Laios has been impaled alive. Sabe panics when he sees the boy seriously injured. He wants to heal him, but as he has never successfully cast a healing spell before, he decides to take the boy to the village immediately. Sabe limps as he runs, carrying Laios, who begins to lose consciousness from the pain. And while the little boy faints, Sabe curses himself for not practicing healing magic. He begs for someone to help him, when suddenly he hears Laios' voice. Sabe looks up and discovers a bird made of magic communicating with him. The bird tells him to keep going, because if he hurries, he will still be able to save the boy. Sabe gets up and walks towards the village, praying every step of the way that he'll make it in time. Suddenly, Zero and his mercenary arrive. Sabe apologizes for not being able to cure the boy, but Yohei tells him that he did just fine on his own. Just then, Rooks arrives, and Zero asks her to share some of her blood with the boy to save his life. Rooks cuts his wrist and lets a red fountain of blood gush out of it, so Zero uses her healing power to save Laios. Soon after, they arrive at the hospital clinic. Rooks has fainted because of blood loss, while Zero has fainted because she used too much magic. The doctor treats them and tells Sabe to stop crying, but his tears seem to be out of control at the moment. He tells everyone about the strange monster he fought earlier, and Rooks says that it's one of the demonic monsters that the demons created to torment humans. The strange monster disguises itself as prey, then attacks its target with blood-sucking thorns, which after a while turn into new monsters. Zero believes that the demonic monster can only be found in the north and that it must have been brought here on purpose. Ellen sees Yohei to investigate further. However, as soon as he opens the door, he finds Holdum has come to make a surprise inspection of the village. The two beastmen go to the church and discuss the details with Dan. Holdum says he's heard rumors about someone capturing the monsters and selling them, and the presence of one in the forest proves it. Dan decides to take Lily along and investigate the monster, and Yohei also plans to go to the nearby villages to warn them. And since the two most capable warriors are leaving the village, Holdum thinks that the village security will be weakened, so Yohei asks him to stay behind and protect the village instead. And after a bit of insistence, he ends up agreeing to do the job. Suddenly, Zero enters the room and tells Yohei that she will go with him. He tries to convince her to give up, citing that her magic is exhausted. However, in the end, Ellen is his boss, and he is forced to accept her order. Afterwards, Holdum arrives at the hospital and tells the students everything that led him to be in charge of the village security. After telling them everything, he tells them to run back home and be alone with Rook. And Rooks is suspicious about the timing of Holdum's appearance, which coincides with the discovery of the monster. But he tells her that it's just a coincidence, because if he had planned to destroy the village, he would have done it a long time ago. He then asks her if she couldn't do something about the monster, as he knows that his master has always counted on her help. Rooks then remembers Serena, who was Holdum's master, and who was a good friend of hers. Serena died protecting people, and Rooks is sure that she would ask her to save the village, which was her dream project. She decides to accept the mission, but asks Holdum what her compensation would be. He responds by saying that he will beg Albus to let her access the Grimoire of Zero, and Rooks gladly accepts the offer. Meanwhile, Sage tells his friends that today he learned that he needs to work hard to become a wizard, which is why he needs them to teach him how to cast spells in exchange for having his magic recharged. The two don't object, and Rooks even asks him to replenish his supply of magic with a kiss. But since Sage is a shithead, he doesn't understand what she means and rejects the request. Just then, Holdum arrives, and Rooks says he'll take them to the inn where they can rest. He tries to act calmly, and says he won't go to the inn with the girl. Suddenly, Lyo's father arrives and takes Sage aside for a private conversation. He knows that it's not Sage's fault that Lyo's got hurt, and he knows that he even saved his son's life. But despite this, the damn giant father doesn't want him to go out with his son anymore. Sage is left alone, and someone attacks him from behind, and it turns out to be the same witch hunter as before. The tyrant, yes, the one they fought in the forest. He strangles Sage and knocks him unconscious. After being captured, Sage is thrown into a carriage, where he hears a woman's voice asking him how long he will keep his power hidden. Suddenly, his forbidden memories come back to him, and Sage sees his mother hiding him in a safe place, and warning him never to go near a witch who has eyes like his, because she will take everything he has. She locks him up safe, but suddenly an explosion shakes the whole house, and a power-hungry witch comes through the hole in the wall, and tells Sage to come out of hiding if he doesn't want his mother to die. Sage comes out of the secret camera, but the witch still kills his mother mercilessly before his eyes. He is devastated by this, and the witch grabs him to steal his power. She inserts her hand into his chest and grabs his heart, letting his power flow into her. However, before she could finish what she wanted, Sage grabs her hand and overwhelms her with his magic. Somehow, the evil witch manages to remove her hand, but now it's too late, and she dies a horrible death by being melted alive. Sage screams as he remembers these things, but Tyrant removes his mask and slaps him to make him stop. He then tells Grotto that he's been ordered to take him alive this time, so he can't do much damage to him. Suddenly, they hear someone approaching and discover that it's Holt and Cud, who are riding in a wagon that's heading towards them. And despite not being able to control horses, they jump out of the wagon before it crashes and stop right in front of the kidnapped Sage. They are startled to see the Tyrant here, and Cud quickly realizes that they have to fight to rescue Sage. He cuts off its tail and hands it to Holt, who uses it as an offering for a spell and releases the Tyrant's powerful blue flames. She does this without performing any incantations, and he doesn't have enough time to block the attack. What's more, Holt's control has improved, and she burns the ropes holding Sage without even hurting him. The Tyrant prepares to fight them, but suddenly Sage grabs his arm, telling him not to move or he'll die instantly. On the other hand, Holt is in the forest to deal with the demonic monster. She puts her staff to work, and it immediately scatters in all directions. Once this is done, she retrieves all the fragments of the monster before devouring. Holt is satisfied with the result of her job well done, but then she comes across a man who is swollen because he has been stung by wild bees. She takes him back to the village, where she finds Holden unconscious. She wakes him up and asks what he's doing here, and suddenly she remembers a man who came to inform her that Saber had been kidnapped. Holt and Cud immediately wanted to help him, and when he tried to stop them, he suddenly fell asleep as if someone had cast a spell over him. Holden panics at the thought that the students could be in danger at this rate, but Holt tells him to stop overreacting. She knows who is behind the kidnapping, and she knows that this must be a plan by the principal, who is actually the principal, to create an incident in the village, and to see if the students can handle it or not. He agrees with her, but then tells her that the problem is that the principal has hired the fearsome witch hunter for the job. Back in the forest, Tyrant headbutts Saber and knocks him to the ground. Laughing at his confident words earlier, he smashes Saber's hands with his hammer, and then knocks out his friends too, saying that they are still too naive to threaten to kill anyone. He then looks at Saber, believing that since this level of damage can be fixed with magic, then the one who gave him the job won't mind this kind of damage. Then out of nowhere, his hand holding the hammer is cut off, and the Tyrant is bound by sharp ropes on all sides. He realizes that this is the work of the blindfolded priest, but he's sure that they saw him leave the village earlier. Dan comes out of hiding and says he's come back because Lily's rats have warned him that a plague has entered the village. He cuts off all the nearby lantern, and as the moon is covered by clouds, everything is dark, which hides his terribly sensitive eye. Dan has the eyes of a wizard, and he is strong enough to be able to cut off the Tyrant's 2 legs, and after doing so he tells him not to bother about it. After all, it can all be fixed with magic. Tyrant gives up fighting, and soon Zero and Yohei arrive on the scene. As they think Dan will turn the attacker into mincemeat, soon Hoax and Holden arrive on the scene. Holden is surprised that Tyrant has eliminated 3 students single-handedly, so Zero asks him what his relationship with the criminal is. Holden, like a good man, wets his pants and hides behind Hoax, while Zero tells him that his life depends on this answer. Everyone goes to a dungeon below the church, and Holden says that Tyrant was given a task to bring a student out of the village alive if he wanted to get rid of his criminal record. Hoax realizes that this time the village's ability to protect students was on trial, and while everyone blames Holden for his incompetence, Zero thinks that this test exposed the village's weak defense. However, Yohei and Dan believe that the situation only got this way because they had to deal with a monster, but on reflection they are forced to state that their village has no fighting power. However, Yohei still believes that they can protect the village just fine. However, when they try to protect other villages, it turns out to be a big problem. Zero knows that they can't abandon the other villages, or their village's reputation will be damaged, and in the midst of this confusion, Holden gives him an idea and tells Zero to use the Tyrant if she wants extra fighting power. The Tyrant says that wasn't part of the deal, but Holden tells him that he has already failed in the deal, and that if he wants to live, he must do whatever Zero wants. Zero accepts the suggestion, but the next day, when she tells the students about it, Holt objects with all his might. She believes that the Tyrant could betray them at any moment and that he should be executed. Holt tells her that it's fine if she wants to take revenge, but that by doing so, she will only be perpetuating the cycle of hatred between witches and ordinary people. She explains that Tyrant has committed many sins, but that he is being given the chance to do something new and be forgiven for his crime, in exchange for protecting the village. Holt says that Tyrant has killed many innocent people, but Dan tells her that when he worked for the church, he also killed anyone he was ordered to, no matter who they were. Holt joins in, saying that her team has also taken the lives of many witches, which means she should be executed too. And after Holt is pressured from all sides, she decides to call off her appeal for Tyrant's execution. Instead, she wants him to live under the constant supervision of Will Ray, and asks everyone to keep an eye on him so that he doesn't commit any atrocity. The next day, Holden leaves the village and offers Holt to go with her to the Forbidden Library in the north, but she refuses the offer, saying that at the moment she's more interested in witnessing her students grow up than liking Zero's grimoire. She returns home to find Sabe telling Holt that his memories have returned. He explains that they are terrible memories, and that he doesn't feel as if he remembered them naturally. Sabe says that he still doesn't feel like a proper person, because even though he has recovered his memories, he still doesn't understand human emotion. He reveals that Holt told him that Holt was in love with him, and the girl turns red with embarrassment. Sabe, however, doesn't understand what it's like to love someone, and desperately wants her to know it. With that, Holt says that the feeling is that the person you love is special, and Sabe says that she is special to him too, but Holt responds by saying that this still doesn't mean that he loves her, and decides to give him more hints of what true love is, saying that it's the desire he might feel to have a deeper relationship with this person. And while Sabe thinks thinks about it, he remembers his moments with Holt and says that maybe he likes her better. Holt, poor thing, is heartbroken and almost calls him a lolicon, but she still tells Sabe to count on her whenever he needs love advice. After that, she asks him to recharge his magic, but just as Sabe is about to do so, memories of the witch melting from an overdose of magic pop into his mind. He shrugs and tells Holt that he can't give him any more magic, then runs off to see Zero. He gets anxious when he enters her house, but calms down quickly when he sits down for tea. Sabe tells her that his memories came back for no reason, but Zero believes it was because his life was in danger. She is relieved that he is not so shaken by the difficult memories, and says that this is because he is no longer an empty shell. She comforts Sabe, saying that he needs to face these difficult memories and overcome them if he wants to become strong enough to protect everyone. Sabe then tells her that his mother told him to stay away from a witch with the same eyes as his. Zero smiles and her eyes sparkle as she reveals the secrets behind her similar eye. She tells Sabe that his father, magician Roman 13, was her brother, and that they both inherited those eyes from their father. Sabe is surprised to hear this, and his eyes sparkle in resonance with Zero. She tells him that wizard Roman 13 was her only family, and that he would have done anything for her, and Sabe's birth is also related to this. She reveals that his magic was rapidly running out, so Roman 13 found Sabe's mother and had a child with her, because the combination of their genes would give rise to a magician with unlimited magic. He planned to offer this power to Zero, but Sabe's mother found out and fled with her son. Zero says that the pain he felt was because of her, but Sabe says it wasn't her fault. He recognizes her as the reason for his birth, and Zero laughed, saying that he inherited magician Zi's best quality. Sabe says he wants her to tell him more about her father, and Zero says that he was completely irrational, which led him to start a war, wanting a world ruled by witches. After hearing this, Sabe tells Zero that this morning he hesitated to give his magic to Rue because he was afraid she would die. He says that he wants to continue supplying magic to all of them, which is why he came to ask Zero for help. She smiles and holds out her hands to Sabe, saying that from now on they can practice circulating magic a little to improve their control. He takes her hand, and they start to circulate the magic, when out of nowhere they hear someone scream, but Zero doesn't let Sabe go, saying that he needs to master his control over magic before he tries to help anyone. Meanwhile, Rue goes to the pond and decides to forget that she heard Sabe say he likes her. However, Rue appears behind her, at which point she says that Sabe likes her. She's terrified to hear this, before telling Rue that she shouldn't find out about someone else's feelings. But Rue ignores her and asks if she's going to leave them now, as she's heard that witches run away from their students who fall in love with them, and Rue affirms this. However, Rue hugs her and begs her not to leave, and she doesn't promise to go anywhere until their special training is over. Suddenly, they hear Cud's screams coming from the hospital. They quickly get to the hospital and discover that there's been a fight. Cud is injured, while Tyrant has arrested the boy Rue rescued. Rouch tells him to let the boy go, and he obeys her, but the boy immediately picks up a shard of glass and throws himself at Rue, who simply uses Ludens to knock him out. Later, the boy is restrained, and Cud says that he was probably sent by the church to cause trouble here. Suddenly, a woman appears and asks Cud not to talk, as if every church is evil. Rue recognizes the red-haired nerd as Heartful, the village teacher, who has come here to bring lunch for all the patients. She gives lunch to the Tyrant, and even gives one to an unconscious boy. Heartful feels sorry for the boy, and believes that the heartless extremists sent him here, but Rue believes he's just bait to see how they would react to the hostility. While everyone is discussing how to deal with the boy, Heartful approaches Tyrant and tries to teach him some table manners. He doesn't mind this, as the only manners he needs are the ones to kill his target. Heartful tells him to stop acting like a gangster, as no one in the village will be afraid of him, and he decides to test this with her by strangling her. But Rue quickly points her gun at him, and he backs away, even though she was grabbed by the neck. Heartful says it was nothing serious, and even offers to show Tyrant the whole village. And just after they leave, Yohei arrives, and after a brief discussion about what to do or not do with the offending boy, Yohei ends up saying that he doesn't see any point in arguing, and says that he'll leave the boy with Dan, who will extract all the necessary information from the boy using his evil means. And Rue says she doesn't know if the priest is really a good option for this, as he might accidentally end up chopping up the boy, but then something comes flying towards her, and she blocks it at the last moment. The object has been thrown by Dan, who isn't happy that she's talked about him behind behind his back yet again. He then realizes that the boy has been awake for a long time and has heard everything they've talked about. The boy opens his eyes and lunges at him, but Dan simply grabs his neck and slams him against the bed. He turns him over and sits on him, telling him to recognize his position. He then asks Rue to darken the room, and she uses the power of her staff to darken the whole room as if it were night. Dan removes his eye patch and looks directly at the boy, saying that he will now ask him some questions and that if he lies, he will be punished. He asks the boy if he's alone and if anyone will come to rescue him, and Dan keeps a close eye on the boy, just assessing the small movements of the muscles in his face. That way, Dan can tell when he's lying and when he's not. After that, he says that Rue and Yohei haven't gotten much information from the boy. However, Rue believes that if a monster was sent along with the boy, it means that someone very powerful within the church is involved. And since the mentor must use better pawns than the boy he just sent, it means that there is something dark going on in secret, which they need to find out for the safety of the village. Rue hears the conversation and is not happy that the adults are deciding everything themselves. She walks through the village aimlessly and decides to stop at the school, where she sees the shocking sight of the tyrant teaching the children how to make baskets. She asks Heartful what's going on, and she replies that Tyrant is making traps to hunt fish. She claims that he's just a big kid who does his best to scare her whenever he can, and when Rue sees the tyrant playing with the children, memories of him killing her friend surface in her mind, and she feels confused and hurt. She doesn't want to leave a killer like him alone with the students, so she decides to keep an eye on him. However, the students aren't afraid of him, and Heartful says she's teaching all the children not to be afraid of anything without a proper reason. On the other hand, Cud receives a message from Lily's mouse, saying that the boy's transfer up north has been postponed. He scoffs at this and decides to take him somewhere. On the way, the boy complains that this was his chance to die a hero and go down in history, because he believes that witches and beast people are evil monsters that need to be purged. Cud is frustrated by what the boy has said, but nevertheless takes him to the church, where they eat some food made by Lily. The boy is impressed by the taste, but when Cud takes off Lily's hood and reveals that she is a rat girl, he is terrified. Lily apologizes for deceiving him, and he feels ashamed for having acted so rudely towards her. Cud then takes him to a nice room to rest, and the boy realizes that the church has told him several lies about beast men being monsters. Later that night, Sabe shows the results of his training with Zero. He can now use the light spell effectively, and even split the light into different forms at the same time. His friends are impressed, and Sabe then asks Hoax to lend him Luden's staff because he wants to do an experiment. She's happy to lend the stick, but then Sabe says he likes her and wants to marry her, which catches Hoax completely off guard, remembering that she's about 300 years old, so everything is legal here. Hoax interferes, says he's being too hasty, and asks Hoax to drop the subject, but she simply scolds him. The next morning, the boy called Cat has a dream about how the church has brainwashed him into becoming a weapon against the witches. He wakes up from this horrible dream just as the Hoax appears to invite him to go fishing with the village children. When they go to the river, Cat asks Hoax how she can trust a person like Tyrant, and she tells him that trust is something that has to be earned and that she doesn't trust Tyrant yet. However, she is willing to give him a chance, not just him but Cat too, and she asks him to be a good boy straight away and avoid getting into trouble. Suddenly, his stomach makes an embarrassing sound, but the others just laugh it off, and Cat seems to be hiding something from them. On the other hand, Sabe wakes up Hoke, who is quite alarmed when she sees him in her room. However, all Sabe wants is to carry out the experiment he talked to her about yesterday. He has made a magic potion using the knowledge in the book written by 13, and Hoax can't understand a single letter in the book, and is shocked to learn that Sabe can understand it. However, when he tells her that it was his father who wrote that book, she quickly understands everything. She is shocked that Sabe knows that 13 is her father, and that he is indifferent to the fact that her father was the greatest villain of the century. Sabe says that the important thing is that he has found a way to infuse magic into the potions in the book, and that the potion he has created serves to replenish a wizard's magic. He puts a drop into the core of the staff, and immediately the staff glows with magic. The staff takes the test tube from from Sabe's hand and sucks up all the potion, then does a little dance to show he's happy. Hoax touches the staff and discovers that it has gained magic equal to that of 2 witches, and Sabe is surprised that it has contained its power while doing so. He decides to leave to make more potions, but before he goes, he tries to convince Hoax to stay with him. She is confused by his attempts and tells him to disappear while she goes to check on Cat. Meanwhile, Cat is with Hoax and the others. They watch the children playing in the river. The tyrant thinks back to his childhood with his abusive father and how he learned to make traps to survive as a hunter. At the time, a nasty nobleman hired him to make traps to torture and hunt his runaway slaves. But then Dan and his men killed the nobleman and forced him to join the organization where he killed the most mages. He is brought back to reality when Heartful arrives, and they talk about her reasons for coming to this witch village. Her hometown having been destroyed by the Witch of the North. She goes to play with her students in the river, and while Holt asks the witch hunter if he's in love with the teacher, they spot Cat wading into the river like a zombie. Tyrant's survival instincts tell him that something dangerous is about to happen, and he asks everyone to stay away from Cat, whose stomach suddenly explodes, and a monstrous jaw appears from inside it. The tyrant immediately puts himself between the monster and Heartful and kicks the cat away. He tries to knock him down with a punch, but then the cat sprouts bladed arms from his back and cuts off his hand. The tyrant grabs the redhead and jumps out of the river before the monster can attack them again. Holt uses her sleep magic to stop the monster, but it has no effect and it begins to sprout more jaws on its body. The tyrant realizes that Cat has brought more than one monster to this place and that this is a suicide attack. He tells everyone to run away so he can kill the monster, but Holt says he's in no condition to fight. However, Heartful tells them that she will take the children to safety and leave the rest of them to fight. The cat comes out of the water, and Holt tells the tyrant to immobilize him while she chants her spell. He then holds the cat's claws and tries to keep his distance from it, but despite this, the monster continues to attack him. Holt tries to chant the spell and tells the tyrant to move away, but he ends up sacrificing his leg to get away from the monster in time. Holt's spell wraps him up in a stone pillar, but it's not enough and the monster runs right through him. They realize they have to kill it for sure this time, and the tyrant lunges towards the monster, telling Holt to hit it with all his might. She hesitates, but Cud cuts off his tail as usual and hands it to her, who begins to chant the spell for the blue flame attack. In the time it takes her to do this, the monster pierces Tyrant's chest, and he thinks that's the end of him. However, when Holt's attack hits the monster and burns it, Cud uses his most powerful healing spell to completely heal Tyrant's wounds. Unfortunately, his problems aren't over yet, as hundreds of monsters are born from the burnt corpse of the great monster, and Tyrant realizes that they are doomed. He doesn't even have the energy to run because of the blood loss, and Holt and Cut arrive to support him. Suddenly, he realizes something and immediately pins them to the ground. He tells them to be quiet because help is here. Holt arrives on the scene and tells Ludens that it's snack time, and Ludens, as powerful as ever, turns into a giant jaw that swallows all the tiny monster. In the end, after everything, Cud, Sabe, and Holt organize a funeral for Keisha. Suddenly, they see a dragon flying over the village and immediately rush there, where they meet the knight who rides the dragon. He informs them that everyone has been summoned back to the Academy of Magic because this village could soon become a battlefield. So everyone immediately turns to Zero to ask for an explanation. And Cud and Holt say that if a war is really going to happen, they'll need all the help they can get. But Zero tells them that if they don't follow the instructions to return to the academy, they will all be expelled. It's at this point that Sabe declares that in this case, he would like to quit the academy so that he can help in the war. He knows that because they are witches and wizards, they can't go on the offensive, even if they are attacked. So the only way to fight is to use trap. And Sabe says that he will set traps that will catch all the people without killing them so that they can quickly end this war. Zero asks him how he's going to do that. He shows him the magic potion he made. She is surprised by the result and tells him that if he can end this war more quickly because of this potion, she will allow him to graduate immediately instead of allowing him to be expelled. Hoax enters the room at the same time and declares that this will be a great opportunity for him to hold the graduation exam for the student. But Zero tells her that this is a matter for the academy and not for her. But Hoax complains, saying that if they send the students back, she will leave too. However, she wants to stay and protect the village, so she she throws a tantrum as usual and begs Zero to let everyone stay here to fight. Zero agrees to talk to Albus about it, and Hoax immediately starts laughing, anticipating the fun war that is about to happen. Zero sends a message with new details to Albus, and she is impressed by the idea of winning the war without casualties. What's more, she finds it very interesting to use this war to completely humiliate the anti-witch faction in front of the whole world. So she sends Hold'em off to find more allies and says she'll support them in any way she can. Back in the village, Hoax tests Sabe's magic portion, and just one drop recharges her magic by a significant amount. She asks Sabe how he made it, and he tells her that he found the recipe in a book written by his father. Those who didn't know that Sabe's father is a sorcerer are shocked, but when he tells them that his father was the evil Sorcerer 13, it surprises everyone even more. On the other side of the screen, Hurtful calls Tyrant into his class because the students want to thank him for protecting them yesterday. He is speechless, and Hurtful pops a cookie into his mouth because he seems to be lost in thought. After they have finished having fun with the children, the two adults are left alone, and the Hurtful tries to get close to the witch hunter because she knows he likes her, but he decides to stay away from her, believing that he is not fit for love. He goes to the inn, where he finds Hoax eating her food. She teases him about his relationship with Hurtful. Before getting to the main subject, she explains that Sabe plans to set traps and end the war quickly, and Tyrant's ability will be the most important in their plan. Hoax says that she personally doesn't agree that he's so important to their plan, but seeing how he risked his life to save others, she's willing to give him more chances. That said, she leaves him, but her words hit the Tyrant hard, and he is torn between guilt for his past actions and fear for the future. The next day, Tyrant leaves the villagers setting traps and reinforcing their defenses, while Zero and the three students figure out the best way to stop their enemies. Hoax and Yaohei just watch them from a distance, and he says that if the enemies are strong, the traps will become useless, and they will have to fight to kill them. Dan arrives just then, and says that the enemy forces are made up of around 10,000 people, but they are all poor farmers and peasants. The anti-witch faction wants to force the witches to kill them so that they are considered the villain. Suddenly, Lily rushes in to call Yaohei to help her prepare the food. Dan tells her that when the villagers are evacuated to safety tonight, she should go with them. However, she refuses. She says she will stay here and protect Dan, which moves Hoax, and she embraces the rat cave. Now both Hoax and Yaohei think that Dan is having an affair with Lily, those actions that a couple do during the night, but Dan just scolds them for talking nonsense. After that, Yaohei goes into the kitchen, while Hoax shows Dan the sample of a monster that was inside the stomach of that person there who I've forgotten the name of, a miner who died. She believes that this monster would continue to multiply until it destroyed the entire continent, but Dan believes that the anti-witch faction must have found a way to destroy him before releasing him. However, not even the high-ranking church officials know this, and Hoax realizes that the one who has the knowledge to stop the monsters is the real mastermind of it all. Later that night, everyone gathers to reflect on their plans, as they are still full of weaknesses. Sam approaches Zero and tells her to take all the magic she needs from him. He says that since she has the responsibility of bringing peace between the witches and the commoners in the south, she must do whatever is necessary, including using his mana. Zero accepts his words and takes his hand, telling him that the amount of magic he gives her is up to him. Sabe pumps her with his magic, and Zero is stunned because it's much more than she expected. The kid is gigantic. His magic is hard and thick, which forces her to let go of his hand before she is overloaded with so much mana. And even after fully charging her, Sabe feels that his magic is only slightly reduced. Zero is so proud of the fact that his magical power is unlimited that she gives him the title of Wizard of the Abyss. His friends congratulate him on this, but Zero tells them that if any of them mess up in this war, all three of them will be expelled. Meanwhile, Rooks is exploring the enemy forces and discovers that they are stronger than originally described. Not only are they well equipped, but they also have Besheries with them and even a monster possessed by a demon. She thinks the battle will be a lot of fun now. Soon, the army arrives in the forest near the village. Suddenly, they are attacked by huge wild rats under Lily's command, so they decide to to change their route. However, the route they took was full of traps, and as soon as one of them was activated, sharp ropes cut off their arms and legs. Everyone started screaming in pain when, suddenly, a green rain began to fall from the sky, healing all the wounded soldiers at once. They recover their arms and legs before reading the messages on the trees nearby, which simply ask the soldiers if they were frightened by the little prank. Elsewhere, the knights step on traps that set them on fire, but despite the burning sensation for a few seconds, none of them are injured. However, they lose their armor and clothes, and the commander realizes that the witches are showing mercy by doing this. He immediately orders his men to retreat, but the bestial mercenaries led by the demon-possessed bull continue marching forward. Zero receives an update on the battlefield and tells the students that all the human troops have withdrawn from the battle, which means that their traps have worked. The students celebrate, but Zero tells them that more complicated enemies are still marching towards them. She is asked if the demon-possessed are strong, and Zero explains that they are superior versions of the beast men, who can use certain types of magic infinitely without enchantment. Dan and Yaohei are arguing about who will put an end to the demon-possessed, when suddenly they receive a message from Lily, who is in trouble, and they rush to help her. Lily has been captured by the demonic bull and his troops. He says they will take her to the village and eat her in front of her friends to terrify them, until Dan arrives cutting his enemies with his ropes, and Lily ends up being freed from the net she was seizing, and she watches all the mercenaries being cut by the priest's rope. The demon bull catches her and decides to eat her immediately, but at that moment Dan lunges at him with his glowing scythe and cuts off his arm. Lily hides behind him, and the demon bull realizes that his severed arm is not regenerating. Despite his insane powers of recovery, Dan tells him that he has the power of a wizard and that he's also a priest, so his regenerative power won't work, not even if he gives his ass to the demon king. The demonic bull simply rips off the remaining part of his arm, allowing him to regenerate in an instant. At that moment, Yaohei appears, mowing down all the mercenaries in his path and spilling blood everywhere. However, the demonic bull uses his power on his dead friends and immediately patches them up and makes them stand up. They all turn into mindless zombies, and Dan tells Lily to hide while they fight. Yaohei seizes the demonic bull and leaves the rest of the enemies to Dan. Meanwhile, the rest of the beast men arrive in the village, but many of them fall into traps and are impaled to death by hidden thorns. The tyrant insults them for falling into such simple traps, and the mercenaries call him a traitor for abandoning the church. Suddenly, they are hit by magical arrows fired by Holt. The leader of the mercenaries orders his men to kill the three mages, but the tyrant jumps up to face them and begins to strike them. The mercenaries scatter to avoid him, but then Azaru arrives on the scene to guide his students. Following his command, they launch magical arrows at the mercenaries, who take cover behind anything they can find to protect themselves. Holt is disappointed not to have hit them, but Azaru tells her to improvise her strategy because she is up against experienced warriors. Three mercenaries run towards them, and the tyrant casts a special magic potion that makes resistant vines sprout to capture them, and only two of them are captured, and the third gets close to Sabe and his friend. He tries to attack them, but Sabe simply holds his hand and melts him, overloading his body with her magic. Holt decides it's her turn, and suddenly she's raining fire from the sky and hits all the mercenaries instantly. She is very proud of having mastered the fire spell to cast it without enchantment and hit many targets at once, but fears that she has overdone it and killed some people. However, Cutie jumps onto the battlefield and heals the seriously wounded mercenaries, confusing those who are still standing. Suddenly, they hear a loud, thundering sound coming from the Yaohei pushing the demonic bull towards the village, its sword embedded in its body. They crash into the wooden fence, and Yaohei tries to strangle the demon bull, but it counters and grabs his throat. Yaohei cuts off the demon's hand and stabs its throat, but it's no use as the demon bull instantly regenerates from all the blows it has received. Yaohei has no choice but to lose Zero's help, and she tells him to leave the village border under her command. He says she doesn't have to go that far and punches the demonic bull, but Zero has already started chanting a very powerful magic spell. Its power creates a green portal in the sky, and she tells Yaohei to go back immediately. Before retreating, he cuts the demonic bull in half, and as the bull heals, zombies emerge from the ground and start clinging to it. And when he's fully healed, he finds himself surrounded by a whole army of zombies, who start biting off pieces of his body until the demonic bull is reduced to nothing but but bone, and Sabe and his friends can only stare at the scene in horror. Zero cancels her spell and tells her students that spells like that are the reason why powerful mages who follow the path of evil can be so destructive. With that, the war ends and the bestial mercenaries also leave. Albus and his friends were watching everything from a distance, and even called the 7 great bishops of the church to witness the fact. And the principal Albus tells her friend that she has discovered the identity of the mastermind among them, but she needs concrete proof before exposing him. Suddenly, a huge swarm of creatures appears in the forest and everyone panics. Albus protects the tall ones, while all the mages cast a blue flame spell against the little monsters. The blue flames are completely ineffective, and the monsters leap out of the fire and attack everyone in their path. The 7 bishops, along with Albus and his friend, arrive safely at the top of a hill. One of them, Bishop Eidmer, tells them all to stay close to him, as this way he can keep them safe from the monster. He claims that he has protection against the monsters, but he didn't release this power before because he believed that the witches would be able to stop the monster. He teases Albus by saying that she and the village witch have failed miserably, so they are no longer needed. However, Albus confronts him and reveals that protection from the demonic monsters can only be obtained if he knows the true name of the demon who created these monsters. She asks Eidmer how he knew the demon's name, and he fumbles, leading all the bishops to distrust him. Suddenly, the disgusting monsters rush towards him, ignoring everyone else, and even when he shows them the protection spell, they won't let him. Eidmer wonders what's going on when suddenly the monsters melt into a black liquid and return to Hoax's staff. She asks Eidmer if he was scared by her prank, and he realizes that all the people who were attacked are now completely fine because the monsters were fake. The Hoax tells the corrupt bishop that despite her evil deeds, she will not kill. She then takes an egg from the disgusting monster on her staff and tells Eidmer to eat it, just as he gave one to Keisha, that little boy who died there, revealing that she knows he was the one who fed the egg to that boy. He begs her to spare him, but the moment he opens his mouth, Hoax shoves the egg inside him, makes him swallow it, and then declares that she has forgiven him. Soon after this, rumors of the war spread throughout the south. People began to mock the anti-witch faction, which failed to subdue a single village, despite having an army of 10,000 people. They also curse Eidmer for bringing monsters to the south and putting everyone in danger. Albus summons her 3 students back to the academy and hands them their diplomas for an excellent performance in the war. They are very stunned by the sudden news and think it's another test from the principal, and Albus panics because her students don't trust her anymore, and Hoax ends up asking if she will help them get a job from now on, and Albus says she has perfect jobs for them. Their new job involves traveling to the Forbidden Library in the north and collecting information about that demonic monster. Afterwards, the trio return to the village to collect their belongings, and Zero tells Sabe to take the book written by Wizard 13 with him and wishes him good luck for his future. After that, they say goodbye to the rest of their friends and set off on their adventurous journey in a cart carried by a white dragon. This concludes the first season of the anime Mahou Tsukai remake.